If you haven't gone and seen this yet, I encourage you to go watch it. If you are a Georgia fan, Texans fans, others, welcome to the channel. Kamari Lasseter was a second-round pick for the Houston Texans. Cornerback for the Georgia Bulldogs the last couple of years, right? Starter for the last 2 years. He was a 3-year guy, played a reserve role on the 2021 National Championship team, was a starter alongside Kelly Ringo on the 2022 National Championship team. And he goes second round to the Texans. He was one of the higher ranked corners in this class, alongside guys like Cooper DeJean, Kool-Aid McKinstry, Quinyon Mitchell, Terrion Arnold. He was kind of right there at the end of that tier of corners in the eyes of most in this NFL draft. And I'm going to tell you right now, he is a dog. He is a dog. And I don't just mean he is a Georgia Bulldog, he is a dog. I mean, he's a dog, and that's just kind of the way he plays defense. But Nick Caserio, the Houston Texans GM, like what I'm getting to here, was explaining some of their picks in their press conference, right? They do a press conference addressing the draft. Was asked about Kamari Lasseter, and he goes on and on about Kamari's character, his leadership, how you're not concerned about the speed, right? The times. And I will talk a little bit about Lasseter and what he had to say. But he made a comment about Kirby Smart, and it got me thinking. And I was looking through the last few drafts, and whoo, are the Dogs nailing it on the recruiting trail with these defensive backs and the development of these defensive backs. And I'm going to count it out for you when you look at how many defensive backs they've had drafted since the 2021 draft. Just in this decade. Didn't have any defensive backs drafted in that 2020 draft, as most of them returned for that final year in 2020. He said that Kirby Smart and Nick Saban were the best at coaching defensive back, the technique, coaching corner technique. And I thought that was very interesting, right? You look at Kirby, was a defensive back himself, right? So he should be able to coach that. You know how much the defensive backs matter to him. You know how much the safeties matter to him, the corners, right? It's obvious that he has a connection with them. If you just watch, right? I have a closer look, so it's easier for me to see certain things, but you see the relationship that Kirby had with the Lewis Scene. You see, his relationship with the Malachi Starks. I'm seeing, those types of relationships. Christopher Smith. I'm seeing that relationship kind of bud with KJ Bolden, a freshman safety that they went after very hard in this most recent class. We can hit on him as well in this video, because this is going to be just kind of, I'm calling it a yap session. I'm loving the phrase yap session. It's hilarious to me. Kirby Smart, defensive back, Georgia yap session in relation to this draft and what Georgia's done the last few years. Go check out with Nick Caserio. And Nick Caserio, the Texans GM for the last few years, I think he knows what he's doing. They just went and got Stephon Diggs. They got C.J. Stroud. They got their guy. They made that trade for Will Anderson. They got so many assets out of the Deshaun Watson situation, and they're using that to build a team and looking like a real budding situation. So trust his football opinion, and Colin Kirby, one of the best at something in coaching defensive back technique. So let's talk about all the defensive backs they have pushed out to the NFL over the last few years. Ryan Curley from Dawg posts here. If you're just tuning in, my phone was in my lap. It just fell. If you just heard that noise. If you didn't, let's keep moving on and make sure you're signing up for the Dawg Post newsletter. It's in the description of the link down. It's a link in the description of this video, which you can find down below. I botched that up. Don't botch up signing up, though. It's free, and that is the biggest point of emphasis. He talks about Kamari and how you don't worry, like, the speed thing's funny and the testing's funny. The combine can really help. The pro days, they can really help or hurt someone based on these tested numbers, and the numbers do tell you things, but the tape tells you more. And Kamari Lasseter was a lockdown corner for the last couple of years. He said not worried about the speed. You saw what he did as a producer in the SEC. You know the kind of coaching he got. 2021 NFL Draft. Eric Stokes, first-round pick. Richard LeCounte, fifth-round pick. Tyson Campbell, first-round pick. Mark Webb. Looks like this was a seventh-round selection for... Oh, Tyson Campbell was a second-round pick. My bad. He was the first pick of the second round in 2021. So they had four defensive backs drafted in 2021. Heading into a new season. Heading into a season where they won the national championship. Well, what does Kirby go and do, right? And we're not even talking about like DeAndre Baker and Dominic Sanders and Quincy Monger, those guys from the era before. We're talking about just in this decade. 2 NFL corners, 2 NFL safeties, right there. Boom. You got Lewis Cine, Darion Kendrick, Keely Ringo, and Christopher Smith as your, I blanked for a second on who it was, and Christopher Smith as your next defensive back room. Coming off of that. All right, Latavius Brini, William Poole kind of rotating in there as a star. Had a harder time figuring out that position. And then they won a national championship. Lewis Cine, first-round pick. Darion Kendrick, fifth or sixth round pick off the top of my head. Keely Ringo comes back. They bring in a Malachi Starks. Christopher Smith goes off, or Christopher Smith stays, so they got Malachi Starks and Christopher Smith as the duo after Lewis Cine leaves at corner. Well, Darion Kendrick left. Next man up, Kamari Lasseter and Keely Ringo. Keely Ringo goes. Next man up, Dalen Everett. You got Kamari Lasseter. He goes. You see the cycle here? NFL defensive backs. They're going and getting them, right? It's not just about the players you have, though, right? And the player itself matters. And I always say, well, it starts with they have the guys. Why is Georgia so good? They have the guys. They have better players. The development part and the coaching part is the other portion, right? Sometimes a 3-star or a 5-star ranking is not completely accurate. It's not always accurate. For the most part, the model has been a pretty solid indicator of a player's success, and that's why those models are used, and that's why those systems are used, because it is somewhat accurate. But you do get outliers. Javon Bullard is one of them. 3-star, Milledgeville, right? Part of that is a lack of exposure, part of that's late growth spurts, all that kind of stuff. Javon Bullard was just a second-round pick. This was not a highly recruited guy. Kamari Lasseter was a Tuscaloosa guy. Alabama was not paying attention to him. Alabama was not on him. And Georgia was. And he was a 4-star, and he wasn't some unknown person. But Kamari comes in, and he gets developed. Corners who run 4.6s don't get drafted very high. And Kamari Lasseter was just a high second-round pick. Why? Because of what he accomplished at Georgia and the way he plays on the field, the technique. And part of that comes from Kirby Smart. He's getting all these guys in, like I said, and developing them. 3-star Javon Bullard. Keely Ringo, someone, athletic freak, has to learn that technique. He gets developed a little bit at Georgia. He's part of big moments. He doesn't play as much as your average college guy. But Christopher Smith's another one. This is a guy that hung around for a long time, waited his turn, fought for his turn, was developed, got better and better, and he was an All-American safety by the end of it. And he's in the NFL as another draft pick. So you go through 2021, they have those 4 guys. The 2022 draft, you get Kendrick and Lewis Cine drafted. That's 6 right there. 2023 draft, you get Ringo, you get Christopher Smith, and I think that's it. This draft, you get 3 more. You get Tyke Smith, Javon Bullard, and Kamari Lasseter. We're talking about 11 defensive backs over these last 4 drafts. That's crazy. That's crazy. And guess what? A year from now, Malachi Starks is going to be a first-round pick, if I had to guess. Dalen Everett and Julian Humphrey, if they play well this year, are going to be subjected to be top 3-round picks if they're really good this year. Maybe first-round picks. Other safety spot, I don't know yet. Right? We're not 100% sure. Janelle Aguero, I believe, is going to be the star, so we don't know about that yet. But we know that Kirby loves these defensive backs. It's what he knows. It's what he's good at. They've had so many good guys that can coach back there. Will Muschamp. Over time, they got Travaris Robinson in there. They've had all sorts of guys come in and be positive impact, and it's a position group that doesn't always win, right? I don't think that they won against Ohio State and Marvin Harrison Jr. and C.J. Stroud. They didn't win against LSU in 2019 when they had some of those guys. They lose some of these battles, but they've been winning almost all of them, and they haven't gotten torched too bad. They lost to Bryce Young and Jamison Williams and John Mechie in the SEC Championship a couple years ago. They weren't perfect in this last battle against Jalen Milroe and Isaiah Bond. They don't win every single battle, but they win most of them, and this coaching staff has kept it rolling with having them in. KJ Bolden, I want to go back to that. Kirby recruits you really hard, even if you're committed to another school, no matter what, right? If you're a player like that, well, obviously KJ is one of those players, They went really hard after him, and I'm starting to tell that, one of those special relationships is forming. But just because you're a 5-star, 4-star doesn't mean you're just automatically going to go to the NFL. These guys are getting developed and producing at Georgia. They're winning games at Georgia. They're putting out good game film, and they're getting coached by the best, which is always going to help a person's case because they know that can continue, and that good coaching and that good ability to learn and gel and be a sponge and absorb things, that's a trait that they look for in players. And so that's what Kamari Lasseter showed Texans GM Nick Caserio, who's done a really good job and knows what he's talking about. Thanks for watching.